Hello, hello. New angle, mainly because I'm standing, because my back hurts. But yeah, also new-ish lighting because I hate my overhead lights, and this is what we're gonna do. Hopefully it's okay, but if it's not, I'm really sorry. Hello everyone and welcome to whatever this video is gonna become. My name is Rena, and today we're finally going over the books that I read for the month of May. Yay! I have my journal with my notes, so let us get started because I'm gonna be trying to do all the books that I read for the month of May in this video. So for the month, I read a total of 10 books. 2 of them are a little bit, there's a caveat to those, but I will just mention it when we get there. Yeah, and then usually I do these books like chronologically through the month, but my brain, I have a really hard time doing that. So instead, this time, I'm trying to organize them kind of by genre. Mainly the only kind of genres I have this month are YA and like not YA, which hopefully just will help my brain because as you know, if you watch my videos, I'm like standing there half the time trying to figure out if it's a YA book or not, so I did that ahead of time. So yeah, let's get started. The first book that I'm going to be talking about is The Prison Healer by Lynette and Noni. I was really excited to finally get to this book. A lot of people that I know have read it and really enjoyed it, and I also really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 5 stars. This basically follows a girl named Kiva. She's 17 years old and she's working as a healer inside this like death prison camp. She's been there for a long time. She was originally brought with her father, but her father has since passed away, and her only mission is really to stay alive until her family can get her out. She's in charge of like the intake of prisoners, so like her family hides like these notes in people's clothes, basically telling her just to stay alive until they can get her out. And she's been getting the exact same message for years, but this one day changes when one of the prisoners that they brings in turns out to be a rebel queen that's been leading like the rebellion, and Kiva's new mission is to keep her alive no matter what. However, the rebel queen has been sentenced to something called the trial by ordeals, which basically are these 4 trials that follow 4 different elements that are nearly impossible to survive, but if you survive them you'll be released from prison and your sentence will be like cleared basically. And so Kiva is forced to enter these trials on her behalf. This book was not what I was expecting at all. I don't really know what I was actually expecting, but this kind of like blew through all my expectations. It is like fantastically like morbid and dark, and I feel like it really captures, I think fantastic is the wrong word, it captures such a dark and dystopian atmosphere while also being fantasy. I really did get the same feeling that I did when I read The Hunger Games for the first time, except this is much more like heavily leaning into the fantasy genre than like of course Hunger Games. I feel like I can't really say too much because there are a lot of really interesting plot twists. Some of them I saw coming and then a lot of them really took me out. So in this book there is a bit of a romance, and it really does follow a lot of tropes in the YA genre, but there's a part at the end that kind of like flips those expectations like completely on its head. Like I did not see it coming because it completely defies the usual tropes that you find in a YA book surrounding romance, and oh my god, it took me out. I literally had to sit and process it for probably like at least a day before I moved on to the next book because I was like, there's no way that just happened, because I'm physically unwell. Like yeah, I'm pretty sure I also got through this in like 1 or 2 days if I'm remembering correctly, but yeah. So I would like definitely highly recommend this book. I haven't gone through the rest of the series yet. The teapot has not let me have it. The teapot's like my TBR jar for people who are new here. So I don't know how it like stands with the series, but like the first one is really, really good, and I do really want to read the next one. I do feel, so if you're someone who's more into like manga and anime and you just watched the season finale of season 2 of Apothecary Diaries and you kind of need something in the same-ish genre, not genre, but like the same, you want a similar main character to Mao Mao, I feel like Kiva is really similar. She's a little bit more like morbid because I feel like Mao Mao's position, though Mao Mao is very like conscious of her role and like she could die very easily if she messes up, Kiva's in a little bit more pressing circumstances. If you are someone who wants to get more into reading fantasy, this would be really great. But also vice versa, if you're someone who really enjoyed The Prison Healer and don't really like want to start reading manga or watch anime and don't really know where to start, The Apothecary Diaries is a great show. There's currently 2 seasons out, and if you are not a fan of subtitles and listening in Japanese, the English dub is also out for free on Crunchyroll, which I think season 1's on Netflix too, but I feel like I really loved season 2, so do with that as you will. So the next 2 books that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to try to keep it brief because I actually have a video coming out on the whole series and I do talk more in depth about what I didn't like about them in that I'm editing it right now. It should be up later this week. Yay. But those books are Legendary by Stephanie Garber and Finale by Stephanie Garber. I don't have it, so I'll put it right here. Whee! Okay, so if you've never read Caraval, basically Caraval is this book about a girl and her sister. They live on this island and their father's really abusive. They don't really know how they're gonna get out of it. Their father decides that Scarlett, the older of the two sisters, needs to get into this arranged marriage, and she doesn't want to, but she also could see like, oh, this is a good way to escape. But in this world, there's this magical game called Caraval, where it's like very rare and hard to get an invitation, but basically when you win the game, you have a chance to win a wish that like literally could be anything. And Scarlett has kind of been obsessed with it since she was a kid, but she's never gotten invited. Until suddenly, her and her sister get an invitation, they get to the island, and Scarlett's kind of still iffy about playing until her sister Donatella is kidnapped, and she's forced to play the game to find her sister. Yeah, which, me explaining that has pretty much nothing to do with the rest of the series, which is probably one of my hottest takes about the series, where it really feels like Caraval should have been a standalone book, and then Legendary and Finale kind of worked as a like spin-off duology, because there isn't really a lot that connects the first book and the next two books other than the characters. So we are introduced at the beginning of this book to a very important piece of lore called the Deck of Destiny, which basically are these like magical tarot cards that they're very dangerous because like when you pull a card, it cements your future, which I have some issues with that representation of the Deck of Destiny, but I talk about it more in that other video. The Deck of Destiny themselves are very cool. We get some new characters like Jax. If you've ever read Once Upon a Broken Heart, but you haven't read these, that is the same Jax. I had a lot of issues with this book. Legendary actually is my favorite from the entire series, and that is, I rated it a 3 stars, which just kind of tells you how much I kind of didn't really enjoy this series. It's frustrating because there's a lot of potential in what this world and the books can be. It just feels like it wasn't executed very well. The first book is from Scarlett's perspective, but this one's from Donatella, the younger sister, and I just found her really annoying and like very, very hard to relate to. I feel like a lot of the decisions she made weren't very thought out, and I feel like the characters in these don't feel as fleshed out as they probably should be. Yeah, there's still the games element from the first book in this, but it's not as important really. The one good thing that I did really like about this book in particular was Jax. He's probably the best fleshed out character in this entire world, and like literally I was just holding on to the Jax scenes because those are the only scenes in the book that really make sense at all and feel like the logical conclusion of those scenes. And yeah, it was really frustrating, but this one I did actually like fly through in like one day, and so that's why I gave it a 3 stars, because I wasn't necessarily having a good time, I just got through it. Of course, I'm going to be talking about Finale next, which is book 3 in this series. I'm holding Legendary because I don't have it. I got it from the library, and I'm really, really glad I didn't buy it because I was just so sorely disappointed by how everything ended up. It felt like none of the decisions that people were making in the book made sense. It's like everyone was just like making the worst possible decision. And I'm a huge fan of YA, but like I have not quite felt how terrible the YA genre was like when I was reading Finale. I also feel like Jax again was like still the most solid character, and I'm so upset about some of the things that happened. We also like randomly start getting Scarlett's perspective again, but they just like, I understand what the author was trying to do, but it just wasn't well executed, which is like my main problem with this whole series. But like it just, everything feels like it was a second thought. I'm looking at my phone and I've been yapping about the series for a very long time. More thoughts in that like later video that's coming out later this week, so look out for that. Hopefully I have it edited. So apparently I wrote this one next in the order, but I'm pretty sure this is actually middle grade. Oops. Whoopsies. And that is Fablehaven, Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary. This is book 4 in the series. If you've never heard of Fablehaven, basically it follows two siblings, Kendra, who's the older sister, and Seth, who's the younger brother. One summer, their parents are like desperate for babysitters, so they send them to their grandparents' house, and their grandparents are like super reclusive. The kids in their entire lives have never been to their grandparents' house, and I think they're like 12 and 10, I think. So a very long time to never visit your grandparents. But yeah, they go to their house and they find out that one of the reasons that their parents are so secretive is because they run a secret preserve for mythical creatures. And the world of Fablehaven is very, very cool. My favorite type of fantasy world are like the ones where it's like fantasy, but like in the real life. So like Percy Jackson, Fablehaven, that kind of situation. That is totally what this is. It follows more, it's very dark for a middle grade series, and they're very, very well written. I feel like the first book is incredibly strong, and the way the world builds out up until like I've already finished the series, this is a reread for me, is like very strong and very well fleshed out. The main problem that I have with the series that continues in this book is there's a weird, like, it's not like incredibly age gappy romance, but it's kind of like a situation, I guess, to call it, and it does make me uncomfortable now that I'm older. When I was a kid reading these, I don't really think I noticed, but now as I'm older, I'm like, ooh, maybe we shouldn't have written it like that. As well as, like, I just don't feel like there is touches of romance. Like, it's not like romantic-y by any point, again, it's middle grade, but like there is like little pieces of romance like woven in, and I just feel like the author has strengths, they are just not romance. And especially in like middle grade, which is a very, very interesting genre to choose to, like, not genre, a very interesting age group to have romance. I feel like there's a way to do it well and like honor the age group that you're in, and I just don't feel like this book does it well. It kind of is very insta-lovey in certain places, and not very well planned out throughout the series. It kind of, that is definitely the only thing that feels like last minute in these books, because everything, and the only reason that they feel like that is because the rest of this book is just so good that like when you kind of see those, you're like, maybe we shouldn't. Also, within these like magical preserve systems for magical creatures, there are some that are called dragon sanctuaries, which are like even more difficult to find and even more like secretive and deadly, and we get to finally see one of those said preserves in this book, and that part is really cool. I just love seeing the preserve system and how they kind of rank creatures and deadliness and the interaction with new creatures, and like so good. Like LOL, forgets how to speak, but yes, this one was a 4-star. It was a great installment to the series. So the next book that I'm going to be talking about is Games Untold, which is book 4.5 in the Inheritance Game series. It used to be just a trilogy, but these next books kind of just take place after that. The Inheritance Games, if you've never read it, is basically this girl named Avery gets invited to play against this billionaire's 4 grandsons for his inheritance, because like he died, and like it's the mystery of trying to figure out why her, of all people, has been invited to play this game, but also like trying to win the game, because like these 4 guys are like so serious about, actually not the oldest one, Nash is like, anyway, she's playing against them to win the inheritance of this billionaire. And that's basically the main trilogy, and that's all in like Avery's perspective, versus like the books afterwards are happening more in like the brothers' perspectives. Yeah, and this like 4.5 is like, it does move the series along a little bit. This book is mainly just focusing on trying to fill in background about some things we didn't get to see from the original trilogy because it was in Avery's perspective. There is like backstory on, there is one like prequel story in here, and then most of them are like stories that are happening during the original trilogy, with a few background stories that are happening in book 4. And then we get at least 2 stories that are like actually functioning as a 4.5 to lead us into the next book, which I'm currently forgetting what it's called. Cool. I ended up rating this a 4.5. I had a really good time. This series is not for everyone. I feel like if you really enjoy more character interactions and you don't want to think, like, the plot, for at least to me, makes a lot of sense. I really enjoyed the puzzles. I feel like they made sense. They're not overly difficult. It's more about the character interactions, and I just really, really like these characters. There's one thing that I really love about the second half of this series, is one of my pet peeves is when you like cement a relationship and then like you don't get to see that relationship in like books, and to try to create tension they break them up. They don't do this. The relationships from the first series are like set, and we just get to see couple content, and that is fantastic. I really enjoyed that, because I really hate when you're just like, I'm like, what? Which is actually a problem I have with the Caraval series, but I'm not gonna why did they do that? There was no point. There was actually no point. Anyway, I really enjoyed this one. I know book 5 is out, I just have not picked it up, and yeah, the teapot still hasn't also given me that one. So okay, continuing on. So we are actually gonna bounce back to Stephanie Garber right now, and that's because I did start the Once Upon a Broken Heart series in May. You do not know how many times it took me to say that sentence I just said, but it was kind of embarrassing. Okay. This book follows Evangeline Fox, who is a resident of the royal city of that legendary and finale take place. At the beginning of her story, we kind of see she is engaged to a guy that she's completely in love with, and all of a sudden he breaks off the engagement and gets engaged to her sister. So Evangeline desperately goes to the Prince of Hearts to pray that like something will stop the wedding. And what happens isn't exactly what she hoped for, and she basically accidentally ends up being cursed by a fate. And luckily she's uncursed, and it kind of like shoots her into fame in this city that's just dealing with the fallout of fates, and it brings a focus on her. And so the royal family is like, hey, so like you're really famous, and we were wondering if you could actually go be our ambassador in this like northern country where we need an ambassador. And she's like, well, my sister betrayed me, and my love is missing, and I guess I could. So she basically goes off to this like northern country where she is now an ambassador, and she meets the prince there, and like stuff starts happening. I really don't know a good way to explain this without both spoiling Caraval or this series. I feel like you don't need to read Caraval. If you like the Prince of Hearts in this series, I would really consider reading. I don't suggest this lightly because I did not enjoy my experience reading Legendary and Finale, but that the Prince of Hearts is like the one character that I was like, yes, he's very fun. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the new lore and the new world. I feel like it is much more solid and grounded and interesting than the place where Legendary and Finale take place. The main character, though, does feel a little bit like Tella from Caraval, but better and slightly more fleshed out. Her decisions don't always make the most sense, which I think is just something that like Stephanie Garber is into, just like characters like randomly doing things that don't logically make sense. Because this same issues kind of happen in this book. I do feel like it is much less painful of a read than Caraval, which I feel like I have seen some people who have read it like on TikTok and BookTube say the same thing. So yeah, I would suggest this. I don't feel like you absolutely need. See, but that's it's up to you, really. I ended up rating this a 4-star. It was overall pretty solid and entertaining, and did make me want to read the next book, which I feel like is all you can ask for, because if Finale was the second book of Caraval, I definitely would have not read the third book or picked up this. But here we are, and we had a good time. So, yay! So the next 2 books I'm going to be talking about are those 2 caveat books that I mentioned, mainly because I finished them in the month of May. I did not like start them and finish them in May because that would have been crazy. And those are because they are textbooks. Yes, I do consider textbooks as like books I've read, mainly because I do read them pretty cover to cover, especially like when I'm reviewing information. So for this first one, it is the integrated Korean textbook from Clear Textbooks. This is beginning 2 because I can't find my beginning 1. I was just reviewing my Korean and I got through it, so I was like, okay, this is done. And then this next one actually does have a little bit more reading involved, and that is the Norton Anthology of World Literature. Basically, this series like compiles what it considers to be like foundational texts. So like the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Odyssey, the Iliad, Ovid, Metamorphosis, like I only mentioned a bunch of the Greek mythology ones, but like Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, a bunch of like foundational texts, and it's chronological, so these are the oldest stories in like human history, and of course it's not all of them, and then all of them are not here in their entirety. However, the Odyssey is a translation by Emily Wilson, and I have been looking to try to get a copy of her translation because it's the only version of the Odyssey I've been able to get through the entirety of without being bored. I also know that she's working on translating the Iliad. I don't know if that's out. I remember seeing news that she was working on that like 4 or 5 years ago, and I also know that translating from ancient languages takes a while, so I don't know if that's out yet. So if anyone knows, please let me know, because I do want to pick up copies of those, as well as I do want a copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't know whose translation I want. I do like the person who translated this, I just don't know if they have like a physical text of it. So I did actually really enjoy this. It just did take me like 6 months to get through, which totally messed up my like average day reads on Storygraph, because I went from like my average time for a book being 3 to 4 days to being like 16 days. Even though recently I've been reading books at the speed of like 1 to 2 days per book, it's like barely brought down like 16 days per book to like 12, and I'm like, No. But yeah, I'm currently working on the volume B, which is kind of a lie because I said it in my July TBR video and I don't think I've read a single page. Mainly because I'm like stuck in the middle of Beowulf right now and like I just don't. I read Morgan Is My Name, which is like an Arthurian legend, and I just can't. I have no more tolerance for Old English. Like I can only take so much like Western European lore in like one span. Plus, I've also never read Beowulf. I've actually read most of the ones that I've mentioned before in like other forms. And Beowulf, I have no concept of what it's about. So when I'm like reading some of I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So okay, with that we are on to the last two books, and this is like the adult/mature category. And I'm just gonna get this first one out of the way, and that is because I read volume 2 of the Husky and His White Cat Shizun. I will say when I bought these originally, I had no idea what they were. I was just barely getting into like Chinese light novels because I read Heaven Official's Blessing and I was working on getting those, and these were at a used bookstore where I had to use these gift cards because I was moving, and I was like, I gotta use these gift cards or else I'm just gonna have these random gift cards with money on them. I saw volume 1 and volume 2 on the shelves and I was like, well, no harm. Yeah, a little harm. I should have read what these were about because the plot is a little crazy. You can go look it up if you want to, but basically this is like a reincarnation story, and I don't really love reincarnation stories like at all. I've read Webtoon probably since the first like couple episodes of True Beauty, which is like crazy because I think it was like 2016. Like I've been reading Webtoons for literally like almost 10 years now, and I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. Oh yeah, but on Webtoon there's a lot of reincarnation stories, and like I have tried plenty of times to get into like any of them, and I have hated every single one. If you've been here long enough, you know that I have a pet peeve with time travel, especially when that time travel can mess up previous timelines, and a lot of times these reincarnation stories are a person reincarnating as themselves or someone else in their life, like in their past, to change the future, and that I don't like that at all. And this one is that, like this guy like becomes like the overall emperor of this nation, and he is like super evil and a terrible person, and he reincarnates as his younger self, and like pretty soon after he reincarnates, things start changing from what he remembers. And I don't know why, but like I'm here for the lore all of a sudden, and I'm not really into reincarnation stories, so I'm really confused why this specific story is like keeping me engaged with that plotline, mainly because like this series is mainly romance and I literally don't care, which if you know me is also weird because I mainly only read series for romance, and like this one I don't care. Like I literally stop it. I need to find out why that thing in the background is happening, because like what do you mean? Like how is this happening? I think also that something that is not helping me and why I'm so like kind of curious about trying to figure out what's going on is because I have no previous knowledge of reincarnation stories because I don't get into them very easily. So I really have no idea what's going on, and it's kind of driving me nuts. And it like the only drive that is keeping me reading these books is because I need to know. I need to know what the hell is happening and why. Like also I feel like another thing is I never get far enough into reincarnation stories to figure out why, and like you know what, like it's fine, I'll do it with the series and then I'll just never pick up another reincarnation story again. It's just here we are. And unfortunately this book was incredibly entertaining, so it got 4 stars for me. So yes, this also does have, it literally says for mature readers on the back over the barcode, and I've now learned 4 light novels to check to make sure like to check the rating, because this is the series that taught me that, because I was not prepared to, yeah, okay. I've learned my lesson, I understand. I am picking up volume 3 because I need to know what happens. I just feel like this story is definitely not for everyone. This is definitely like very, very niche, like do not get it. If you are it is totally fine to be a mainstream girly, do not do it, okay? Okay, I'm glad we agree on something. But if you do want to get into Chinese light novels and you want to start somewhere a little bit more mainstream-y, Heaven Official's Blessing. They're right here. And like you've probably heard of them if you are at all in this like realm. And there's an anime out somewhere. I think it might also be on Netflix. I think that's where I watched it. So yeah, I watched it and then found out like the pace of the show was a little too slow for me. So I picked up the light novels so that's how we ended up here. Cool. Okay, we're on to the last book. We've somehow done it, so let's do that. So the last book that I'm going to be talking about is Caught Up. This is the third book in the Windy City series by Tomforde, which is a romance series. It is a sports romance series, and I feel like one of the reasons I am kind of enjoying this series is that every book, of course, it's a different like lead, but it's a different sport. So the first one is hockey, the second one is basketball, and this one is baseball. Which I was really excited for because I like baseball is probably one of the only sports I've ever followed in my entire life. My dad is a really huge Angels fan, so like I grew up going to Angels games, and so like I was really excited because like I was like, ah yes, a sport that I actually understand, which basketball I did kind of understand, but like I was like, ah yes, baseball, one I'm actually excited for. However, it wasn't, I didn't quite get the same feeling that I got reading books 1 and 2. This book follows Kai, which is, he's a player for the Chicago team, I'm forgetting their name, and he is a single father, and the way he became a single father was one day the mom, he didn't know that he had a kid, and so the mom was like, I don't want this kid anymore, and like dropped it off on his lap, and like luckily his team is very accommodating and they've done everything possible for him to keep this kid, but he's incredibly stressed out. He's taking it out on other people, so his coach is like, well, you need a nanny, because he keeps firing all these nannies because he's like, they're not good enough for my kid. As well as he's also very frightened about the fact that he's missing moments in his kid's life because he didn't have those first couple months with him. So his coach is like, I got it. My daughter is not doing so hot right now, so she'll be your nanny, mainly because I know her and she's great with kids. And he hates her. He hates the coach's daughter. I'm forgetting her name, hold on. Miller. Kai is the guy, Miller is the coach's daughter. So Kai hates Miller because he's like, no one is good enough for my child. When Kai first meets Miller, she's like double fisting a beer and like she's had a rough day, but he doesn't know that, and so like they don't love each other, and they're kind of forced into like, it's basically like a little bit like forced proximity, I guess, because she is working as his nanny and so that he can go to work, and like they get closer that way. Miller is also really cool because she's a like really well-known chef, but she's having a hard time because she's supposed to be making like a recipe for this magazine, and it's supposed to be like a really big deal, but it's stressed her out to the point where like she is like stuck in like a functional freeze where she like can't do anything. So she's like, this is a great break to over the summer to do something else, and like yeah, and things happen and romance, and yes, I feel like this is one of the shorter ones of this series, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like for me personally, they didn't spend enough time together. I feel like, yeah, I do really like their relationship, but it wasn't, I don't know, I wish they would have spent more time together, and I wish this book was almost a little bit longer. Yes, I ended up rating a 3.5 stars, and that's basically it. So if you made it this far, congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. If you could like and subscribe, it means a lot. I'm currently at 47 subscribers, and I'm trying to make it to 100 by the end of the year. And yeah, to all of you guys who are subscribed, I love you guys so much, and like forever and always, yay. I appreciate it. Leave in the comments, did you read a book recently where you thought you knew going into it what it was and then didn't? Because I feel like we've all had books like that where we're like, I know exactly what this is about, and the second you're in it, you're like, nope, did not expect any of this, and yeah. So leave it in the comments. Okay, bye! Sorry if the... LOL, we are somehow back to Stephanie Garber, and that is because I actually started Once Upon a Broken Heart in April. Why do I keep saying April? What month was it? So we are actually going to bounce back to a Stephanie Garber book, and that is Once Upon a Broken Heart. Whoa. We are actually going to bounce back to Stephanie Garber. Whoa. We're actually going to bounce back to Stephanie Garber once again because I did start the Once Upon... What? So we're actually gonna bounce back to Stephanie Garber. Why can I not say her name? What is wrong with me? Oh yeah, and then, wow. What was I talking about? How does this relate to what I was talking about? Hold on.